Today, I want to welcome Lenora Edwards. Today's interview is going nowhere where I intended. Lenora and I jumped on Zoom, we started talking, and we really regret actually not hitting record about a half hour ago. But the direction we're going to go is a little bit different. She's a published TEDx speaker, is a board certified speech language pathologist, and she's devoted to empowering people. And because of her background, she was interested in my journey. And that's where we ended up talking. But what I want to talk about today is the path of overcoming, the path of coming back. Life knocks us down. It knocks everybody down in one way or another. And one of the things that Lenora is passionate about is helping people get launched back on that path. Now, in this, we're going to talk a little bit about, my journey, but what my hope is that through Lenora's expert eye, she has some nuggets of wisdom for either you or someone that you know who's stuck and needs to overcome. And so with that, Lenora, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Craig. It's great to be here and spend time with you. And you were right. We probably should have hit record about 30 minutes ago.
Well, it's really interesting. So and for those that aren't familiar with my background, I spent 3 months in the hospital with, initially, presumably dying from COVID, then trying to nurture me back to the point where I was strong enough to go to rehab. And then the last 3 weeks was at a rehab hospital. And every day I had, it's funny, it's mandatory by law, 3 hours of therapy, 1 hour of PT, 1 hour of occupational therapy or OT, 1 hour of speech therapy. And, and Lenora I was fascinated when I saw you because I have the rehab, everybody that was involved in my rehab, even, inpatient and outpatient, have been, the stars of my journey. And so it's people like you that really were quite wonderful. And so, but you've said, kind of backing up to where we were going, you've seen a lot of people go down journeys similar to me, and you say some people make it and some people don't.
Very much so.
What what's that mean? Because I'll just be honest, when we were talking, it was kind of confounding to me because I was like, what do you mean that people don't rehab? What do they do?
Oh, for sure. So, for me, very specifically, my background. So, I've been a board certified speech language pathologist since 2009. And over my career, I have gone from the skilled nursing facilities, which people might call SNFs or nursing homes. I've gone to the adult intensive care units, so the AICU. I've been in the neonatal intensive care units, the pediatric intensive care units, step down units, acute care, school settings. And I have run the gamut of my career over the variety of areas that I've been blessed to be a part of. When it comes to what you had shared with me and a bit about your story, and also the picture that you had shared with me was absolutely extraordinary. The fact that you have this picture and you know where you were, which was in a very difficult space. You were in a hospital bed, there were other tubes involved, there were heavy medications involved, to the point that you had difficulty at one point wiping your nose, that you had difficulty breathing on your own, that you could not even feed yourself. So, to give people an idea of how debilitated you were, that's the picture that we were looking at. And that's the picture that I've seen people in that case. Now to see where you are today. So now we're in 2024 and we're in August of 2024. That journey from where you were in that hospital bed to where you are, even whether it was yesterday or today, whatever you want to call it, is extraordinary because of what it took you to quite literally rebuild all of you. You had to reset your identity, your ability to know that you were able to do it, that whatever people asked of you, if they said, okay, we need you to hold your head up. Okay, I want you to hold the ball, hold it out in front of you, hold it out in front of you. Your neurons and your entire nervous system was firing and wiring to restart and to build that strength. And that's extraordinary that our body is capable of that. And it's extraordinary that you have come that far to the point that now you walk, talk, and maneuver all on your own. At one point, you weren't able to use your phone, which most people would go, oh my gosh, to be stimulated with a phone is extraordinarily overwhelming for the brain. There's a lot going on. So when you were in the hospital bed, like I said, difficulty wiping your nose, difficulty picking up a spoon, when you start to pick up a phone, things that are very familiar to us and it doesn't make sense to you, your brain and your entire nervous system has to fire and wire to figure out what you're looking at. And there are people who don't make it, as in the brain just doesn't recover the way that they had hoped. They can do certain things, but maybe looking at a phone is too much for them. They can do certain things, but maybe feeding themselves is too much for them. And everybody has their own journey. Your journey from where you were, which was short of what I would consider, to me at least, what I refer to as an NDE, a near death experience, because you quite literally were in a coma for a period of time. You had to rebuild everything, everything, including not just your business. I'm talking your ability to walk, talk, and function. That's an amazing thing that your brain and body were capable of doing and going well beyond what you ever thought or what other people ever thought was possible for you. When you see medical professionals, and especially for me, like I'm in the rehab setting, as in I see them in the immediate event. So within 24 hours, I would see somebody. Are they able to alert? Are they able to keep their eyes open? Are they able to even tolerate a wet sponge in their mouth? Do they know what to do? Are they reflexively swallowing or are they intentionally swallowing? Those were my skills, along with understanding where they were on the scales of how engaged were they? Could they keep their eyes open and track somebody around the room? Those are things that we looked at. To going to the rehab setting, as in, okay, you're now able to come out of the intensive care unit. You've come to a step down unit. Okay, great. You're able to sit on the edge of the bed and we can now give you small sips of water. We finally being safe enough to leave the hospital that you can breathe on your own. And then navigating in a what we would consider a short-term intensive rehab stay where you stay for 3 to 4 weeks and you get an hour of therapy a day. To be able to tolerate that is a lot for the nervous system because you were so debilitated and now we're really bombarding you. We have your attention in physical therapy. We're getting you to balance in occupational therapy and put clothes on. We're getting you to feed yourself in speech therapy or hold a conversation, whatever the case is. It's a lot. And people don't realize how intense of an experience that is for your mind and body from going where you were. But also, there are people who don't make it out of rehab in the sense of they're not safe enough to go home. They go to a step down unit or they go to a skilled nursing facility and they're still not safe enough. And then they stay in a skilled nursing facility. So everybody's journey is very, very, very different. And everybody's journey is very, very individualized. And your journey is incredible. And I personally think there needs to be a parade for you every single morning that you get out of bed.
Well, you're very
That's just
kind.
me.
You're very kind. When I think back to my days, especially at the rehab facility and a little bit at the LTAC, which was the step down unit before I went to rehab,
Yep.
I look back and I'm like, there were days I just didn't push it hard enough. They were trying to get me in a wheelchair. They were trying to get me outside. And I was just so exhausted that, that my time when I wasn't doing rehab, it was just so easy to lay in bed. And I look back at that and I think, what if I just pushed myself a little bit harder? But I just felt like I had nothing. And so
Mhm.
I don't, I'll be honest, I don't particularly feel like a hero from that time because I just look at the number of times where they were like, hey, I mean, getting to the point where I could go to the toilet instead of using a bedpan. We had a big, we had a big debate one night and they were like, we need to have you. And I was like, I'm exhausted. I don't have the energy to go over there. And they finally relented and gave me a bedpan. I think that was the last time I used the bedpan, but I look back on that and that's not a proud moment for me.
For me, the way that I look at it is, especially knowing what I know now, especially about the being able to trust yourself and saying, I'm not safe to walk across the room. I can tell you right now, I'm not safe to walk across this room and I really need a break. allowing yourself to have, and even think about this, in that moment, you were telling the sincere truth. You weren't going, "Psh, totally could do it, but I'm just going to say no." You were telling your absolute truth in that moment that you did not feel that you had the ability to do that. Now, having your entire nervous system back online, we get the beauty of the inner critic coming right back to us. And in having that inner critic come back, it's giving us that reflection that says, yeah, you could have pushed it. In that moment, you really couldn't have pushed it. And in your safest way of saying, you know what, I need the help from the nurses. I need to have this just for now. It doesn't take away from anything that you did from before. And it didn't take away, thankfully, from what you did in the future. People could look at it and say, okay, maybe it was a defining moment. But at the same time, in that moment, you looked and said, this isn't safe for me. I need to be okay with asking for this next level of help. This next level is using the bedpan. And that's a great thing because honestly, the other level could have been using the brief. You had the intelligibility or the intellect to say, that's not what I need right now. I don't need the brief. I do need the bedpan and I need to go. And can somebody please assist me? That's a very complex sequence that people don't consider complex because of how quickly you were gaining progress enough to say, quite literally, to verbalize that you needed help. What kind of help did you need? You were able to indicate what kind of help. And you had the bladder control to do that. Think about that whole network, how I just broke that down in three completely different things. That's a whole system that we really take for granted that says, oh, these are things that we just do naturally. They come automatically. For you in that moment, that was a lot of complex processing for your nervous system to go through. At the end of the day, when you were just really pushed hard by your physical therapist, your occupational therapist, your speech therapist, and not to mention the amount of medication that was on board to help keep you regulated. It's
Yeah.
a really impressive thing that you were able to communicate what you needed and that you were able to get your wants and your needs met. And then the next day, you took it as a lesson and said, you know what, that was the last day. That's a great thing, an amazing thing.
Yeah, I think it was either the next day or a couple days after that. And my OT was helping me use the toilet. And the first time had been a disaster. And this time she cheated a little bit. She said, tell you what, when you're done, obviously, I'd sit there and wipe and do my business. And then I would, the next step was to get my shorts up and then sit back down, then transfer
Mhm.
over to the wheelchair. And she said, tell you what, because I think what happened the first time when I was scooching my shorts up, you kind of sit up on one side, pull them up, sit up on the other side. And the toilet had those little horseshoe toilet seats. And I think I hooked my shorts on the toilet seat or something like that. And so the second time she's like,
Support.
yeah, she's like, I tell you what, if you stand, I'll pull your shorts up for you.
There you go.
I'm like, okay, that's a deal. And so the plan was I was going to stand, she'd pull my shorts up, I'd sit back down on the
Mhm.
toilet, and then I'd transfer over to the wheelchair. Well, I stood up, she pulled my shorts up, and I'm looking at the wheelchair and I'm like, if I sit back down the toilet, I'm gonna have to stand up again. That's hard. And so I
Mhm.
made the decision to start heading for the wheelchair, but I never told her. And I didn't have a gait belt. And for those of you who know, a gait belt is a little strap they put around your chest that apparently you can really control somebody very well if you grab their gait belt. Well, I didn't have one on. And she sees me moving in a direction she didn't anticipate. And the only thing she could grab was the back of my shorts. She grabbed the back of my shorts, yanked them up to my shoulders, and guided me into the wheelchair. I
Okay.
was like the biggest wedgie I ever had.
Yeah. You gave her a heart attack while you were at it. But yeah, so especially with the gate belt or even with shorts and grabbing somebody from behind, the intention is to support them, but also in the event that they fall, we have the support person has the ability to help lower them rather than drop them. You want to be able to lower somebody to the floor because it's going to lessen the impact on the joints. And ideally, that person will not get hurt if they are successfully lowered versus free fall, free for all.
Yeah. Well, and the beauty is, I've talked about this in the context of dealing with customers is nobody's perfect in their job. And, once I sat down, I was like, "You just gave me a wedgie." And she said, "You didn't tell me you were going for the wheelchair."
Right.
But there had been so much trust built. I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't upset. I thought it was funny. It hurt
Yeah.
for a little bit, but, I thought it was funny, what happened. And it's one of those things that you can totally see happening. But, the environment of trust that had been built, you know, made it so it immediately registered for me that, there was no malice intended. She was
Mhm.
trying to do her job. As you said, her
Very much
goal is
so.
to make sure I didn't bust up on the floor.
Right? Very much so.
But so here's, I guess, one of the challenges, and kind of turn this around to other people, there is different people are at different points.
Mhm.
And and there's somebody I'm thinking of right now. I don't want to say too many details because I don't want to out them on, on a public podcast, but somebody who's just struggling, who's had a TBI and is having kind of trouble. I'm sorry, TBI being traumatic brain injury, and they're having trouble kind of getting going again. And, you said it's, shocking. For me, it's like I don't know what I would have done other than rehab because I wanted to regain my life. But there are other people that are kind of stuck.
Mhm.
And what are some of the things that keep them stuck, and how can the people in their lives help them get unstuck?
Some of the things that can keep them stuck is thinking that they can't. And I tend to be a very optimistic person. That being said, there are a variety of things that come into play. The importance of having a supportive network. Truly, people saying, I know you're having a tough day. It's okay. We're here for you. We're here to support you. And literally, what you might want to call cheerleaders, literally people in your corner that are constantly cheering you on because that heaviness of being in a brain fog or we're having a traumatic brain injury. There are other things going on within that cognitive space, within that individual's cognitive space. And it's also they're getting experiences from medication that they might be on. They might not, if they were in the hospital or if they're in rehab, they're not getting the highest quality sleep imaginable. There's lots of different noises. They're not in a familiar space. So allowing them the grace that says, if you're tired, I get it. There are certain times now encouraging them to push through, and certain times allowing them that says, I see you're having a really tough time today. We're going to pause for a little bit and we're going to come back in an hour or we're going to come back in 2 hours. And having that relentless determination to really keep encouraging them to keep moving forward, but also being really curious and noticing. And I love pen and paper, they're phenomenal. Write down what's helping this person, write down when they had medication, write down what else went on the day in the day because you'll start to see patterns of, hey, today was a great day. And you might know this. You might have had a phenomenal day, might have walked 5, 10 feet, and oh my gosh, this is extraordinary. The next 2 days, you could have been completely zonked because of how much energy it took to execute on that day of walking 5 to 10 feet. That can really happen and tracking down, okay, well, why were they tired today? Why are they stuck today? What else is going on? And not being sure of where this person is in their life of what they're experiencing with traumatic brain injury, but also recognizing the brain is healing. The brain and the body, they're going through an extraordinary amount of effort to keep your system balanced, to bring what I often say like, back online, to bring everything back to this normal level as much as they could, in addition to digesting your food, helping to make sure that you're going to the bathroom, doing its best to get sleep. There are so many things that are going on that we do need to acknowledge that it's not just about their willpower. They're not just having they're just not in the mood and they're trying to aggravate you for whatever reason that they can't rally. It's not that. To really allow this person the space that says they're having a tough time, I'm still going to support them no matter what. And it's going to take a lot from the individual that's cheering them on from the outside. It's going to take a lot of encouragement, but also needing you to step back and knowing when to put another person in that space because you, as that individual, you love them so much and you want them to help themselves so much. And then you might get frustrated when you think that they're not pushing themselves hard enough. So you as that person need to have that reflection that says, okay, I need to step back because I'm getting angry with them and I'm adding to the situation that's not going to be in their best benefit. So it's having that balance of knowing to encourage and knowing that you yourself need to take that break.
And as you're talking, it one of the things it brings out that was my realization in the hospital is it seems like the title speech therapist is woefully short of the range of the job. Because and just so that some folks know, as far as I can tell, at least from my experience in the speech therapists that I dealt with, yeah, they're responsible for speech, and they gave me some exercises to redevelop my speech. My mouth had gotten mangled by the ventilator, and so that was impairing my speech, but they had me do some other things. But it wasn't just speech, it's also swallowing, and you've talked a little bit about that. But it's not just speech and swallowing. Uh, it hit me that speech therapists are also trying to figure out what's going on in the mind. And I
Mhm.
realized one day I was listening to the questions my speech therapist was asking me, and I realized she was trying to figure out if I needed a psychiatric referral. And so speech therapy, it really encompasses a lot, especially understanding how, where they are, where their brain function is at this point.
Very much so. And a lot of the time people hear the title speech therapist and they're like, "Oh, how's my speech?
Yeah.
Am I saying my sounds correctly?" And I often say, "Yes, your sounds are quite correct, but we also work from the neck and up." So we do work with breathing and vocal quality, especially the fact that you were on a ventilator and also had a trach at one point. The fact that you did, there's a lot going on. So think about that. You had a breathing tube at one point, which went through two very, 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 very gentle pieces of tissue that really could not get damaged. If they do get damaged, they're not always very strong when in their recovery. Then you had a whole nother breathing apparatus placed to help you breathe without having it to go through your mouth. So that had to recover. Then also when it comes to swallowing, your tongue is involved. You have a variety of throat muscles that are involved in that. And when we talk about swallowing, think about the foods. The first food that you got was probably not a T-bone steak. So the first food that you probably got was likely maybe a mouth swab or a little bit of an ice chip just to see how you would do with that. So we do also work on that. Then, yes, the intelligibility, because sometimes there's mouth weakness and their sounds might not be as clear. Then we also go up to the cognitive component. So, if you think about language, language is actually two parts. Everything that you're listening to is the receptive part of language. Your audience is listening, they're receiving language, then they're processing it. Then, as I'm talking, anytime somebody's talking, this is the expressive part of language. And we also get into memory and sequencing and reasoning. And are they oriented? Are they able to put together a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Are they saying sentences that make clear sense? Are they grammatically correct? Or are they saying things that might indicate that they need a psychiatric evaluation because I'm not sure where that sentence came from? There's a lot going on. And that's why I really say that it's quite a complex system. And we need to find ways to really be open to where that system is, but also how we can support it. And it's not always with a pill, it might be with a variety of things that can support.
Well, I remember this was before I went to the rehab hospital, and it was within the first 2 weeks of waking up from the coma, and shortly after they had removed my trach because I could talk. And I started realizing that what I believed about the world, when I would say such and such happened, the people around me didn't believe the same thing I believed. And I remember one moment where I realized I was terrified. I was like, I've lost my mind.
Yeah.
I've lost my mind. And if they figure this out, they're going to take away privileges.
Mhm. Very
Uh,
scary.
yeah. 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 So I started learning how to ask questions to help me figure out what was real and what was not, while hopefully not tipping them off,
Mhm.
as to what I was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And even thinking, what's my last name? My middle name? What's my social security number? What month is it again? What's the day of the week? every day is the same in hospital settings. Every day is the same in rehab. And it can be very disorienting because you don't have this, you have structure to some extent, which is a great thing. Your meals come around the clock, but the structure that you had, like, oh, Monday I did laundry and I also cleaned the bathroom. Tuesday, oh, I met with so and so. It's a completely different structure that you have in the hospital and in a rehab setting. So being able to sort things out and remember what is going on, but also, are you watching a movie on TV? Is this real? Is this the news that's on TV? What's happening in front of me? There's so much coming at you in the hospital setting or in a rehab setting that it's very easy to get disoriented and to constantly have to be reoriented.
Well, the moment where it peaked for me was my brother was visiting and he was making conversation one day and he talked about last visit to my house. And in my version of reality, he had never been to my house. And I know I couldn't blurt out, "Hey, you've never been to my house." And so I asked him, or at least I was afraid if I did, I was like, "Okay,
Mhm,
this is just going to check another box in somebody's checklist that Craig's lost it. Let's take away his car keys or whatever." Obviously, I
mhm.
couldn't drive at the. And so what I did is I asked him, I said, when was the last time you were at my house?" And he said, "I was there last month when you were on the ventilator." And I said, "Well, tell me about your visit. What'd you do?" And what I was doing was I was getting him to describe my house to me.
Mhm.
And as he did, I realized I'd completely forgotten about my house. In my world, I lived in a fictitious house that never existed. And my house of 17 years, I had completely forgotten. And as he described it, I started slowly remembering the house. And that's when it became really, really clear to me that I'd been living in a different reality and I didn't know what was real and what was not.
How do you do when you look at pictures of yourself before?
You mean back then or now?
Before everything, so, like, pictures from 2018, 2017. Do you recognize them? Do you remember them? Do you remember certain
Oh,
things?
I see where you're going. Yeah, I did most. I've been able to reconnect most of my memories. Every now and then, I'll meet somebody that maybe I met once or twice in the past, and I've forgotten them.
Mhm,
But most of my memories are back, and now the sense of time can be
mhm.
confusing. Things that happen leading up to my coma, and even mostly things leading up to the coma. Placing those in time is can be very hard.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
it's not that I don't remember them, I just don't remember where they happened in time.
Mhm, mhm. I've heard explained it a few different ways, also from especially people who have an accident. They it depends on your school of thought, and they'll say if you had an accident, your brain didn't capture it to transfer it long enough to short-term memory. Another school of thought is because it was so intense, it captured it, but it won't actually release it to you because it's for your own safety, because the subconscious is working to protect you so that you don't recall this information unless absolutely necessary. So, unless, for example, if I put people through a regression process or if I'm asking them certain questions and the memory, very specifically for me, I happen to have a certification in an amazing technique which extraordinarily helped my life called holographic memory resolution. And in that thought process, your nervous system going through an event. And as your nervous system gets to what we call T minus 1 millisecond, it will take this event and it will capture all of this information and it will store it in your nervous system because your nervous system remembers and captures everything. And then it will also connect it in a certain way and also store it in a certain way. That being said, it will take the information. It may or may not release it to you, depending on who you are and if you need it. And then you'll go forward in time. So there's lots of different ways of looking at it. And do I need to remember it? Is it absolutely necessary? And what else goes into it? But that's why I was asking very specifically about your memory. What has come back to you? What isn't quite there? Are you okay with it? And how you navigate the world in that way.
Yeah, the more bizarre thing that happened, I don't know if this is a memory issue, but it taps into some of what you're saying. So when I was in my coma, I have what I call dreams. Dreams is, it's an imperfect term because it's really a state somewhere between consciousness and, the darkness.
Very much so.
And reality came into my dreams. I've been able to go back through my wife's journal. She journaled on Caring Bridge as a way of updating friends and family.
Mhm.
And so I can point to specific dreams and I look at her journal and like, okay, this dream happened on this day because my dreams are a reflection of reality. So here's an
Mhm.
example of one. I know when they removed my feeding tube. So originally I had a feeding tube through the nose and eventually they put in the peg tube, which you identified in that photo.
Mhm.
And for those that don't know, a peg tube goes sort of straight into the stomach, feeding tube goes through the nose. Well, the dream I was having when they were removing that was I was up in the North Carolina mountains in sort of an agrarian community, and the patriarch of that community who worked in the sawmill died suddenly, and they had to get him out of that valley. And somehow I was attached to him with a cable going through my nose. And they lifted us up out of the valley, and that cable ran through my nose through the entire lift until we were out of the valley. And then they put me on a stretcher on a train, and that train took me to Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, where I was transferred to a weird medical commune.
Mhm.
Okay, all of those are reflections or how my brain
Interpret.
interpreted what was going
Mhm.
on.
Completely.
Clearly, the cable through the nose, they're removing my feeding tube.
Mhm. Yeah.
The dead guy, coincidentally, the number of people that died around me matched the number of people that died in my dreams.
Mhm. I believe it.
And I think what happened was that particular day, it was, I was on the way to the ER to get the feeding tube removed, and either in the ER or in transit, somebody was talking about somebody who died.
Mhm. Yeah. I also think that, the subconscious is constantly picking up information, constantly. It's always online. And how it communicated to you what was going on was in metaphors. And that's the interpretation that you received. And that's a very phenomenal thing if you think about it. Like, wow,
Yeah.
that's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was some mix up. I don't know what happened, but I was not I was not where I was supposed to be, or somebody was moving me where they weren't, because there was some discussion around me. And the place where the discussion took place in my world was, you know, part of the staff that was on the train. And they were talking about where they were versus where they were supposed to be, what they were allowed to do versus what they weren't. And so my guess is maybe they brought me into the ER early or late, or, who knows,
Hmm.
something like that.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. So let's get back to other people. And let me recount one thing that happened. So in the LTAC, which was sort of the step down, where they woke me up from the coma and started getting me back on some semblance of food, which was, I think, liquids.
Mhm.
Um, but I remember it was a few days after that picture was taken that you saw and it hit me, as my mind was coming back online
Mhm.
and I was starting to realize what my future looked like. I was in constant pain. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything for myself. And I remember one morning I realized, okay, tomorrow, constant pain, won't be able to walk, won't be able to do anything. Day after that, constant pain, won't be able to walk, won't be able to do anything. I started spiraling down. I mean, I was headed for a very, very dark place. And I remember catching myself and it hit me. I was like, Craig, if you let your mind go here, you won't be able to accomplish what you need to do. Turn around, come back. And I'm so thankful that by that afternoon, I was able to get back into a better headspace. But I don't think everybody can make that turn.
For me, I think it's extraordinary that you did. So, when it comes to the subconscious, and I teach this to my clients and students, your subconscious mind is talking to you, and we have that ability to talk to the subconscious. It's just that nobody really told us how this is happening and what does it look like. When we're talking with our subconscious, it often answers first. You will feel like you're making it up, and it will answer quietly. And it's a very gentle voice when it comes from your subconscious. You can even, if you'd like, you can also get into a perspective of a higher self or a guardian, whatever you want to call it. I kind of, when breaking it down this way, I just kind of lump it all together in the subconscious mind. Something else is helping you. Having that version that says, you're going this way. This is a very dark place. You want to come back. That is an extraordinary thing to notice, to recall, and to be able to recognize that somebody, something, whatever you want to call it, was quite literally going, no, no, not that way. Come this way. Come this way. Because also for me, what you did was you future paced yourself that said, tomorrow, pain, not going to be able to walk. Da, 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 da. The next day, pain, not be able to walk. You projected your mind into the future that said, if I keep doing this, this is the path that I will be looking at. And somebody on that other end, whoever was guarding you, whether it was your higher self or an angel, whatever you'd like to call it, however you like to label it, like I said, quite literally said to you, no, no, don't go that way. Come this way. And in that moment, you made a choice and you continued to make the next choice and the next choice that said, okay, I'm going to try this. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And being able to recognize every single moment you are making a choice to choose your health, your vitality, your care, putting you first, whatever you'd like to call it. You're making two choices. One is going to support you, one is not going to support you. This one, or one is going to support you for the better, one is going to support you for the less than better. You made a choice to keep going forward, to keep going in the positive direction, to keep going in the way that quite literally said, I want to live. And not just live. I want to live. I want to thrive. I want to be able to walk again. I want to be able to drive. I want my life back. I want to create this life for myself. Every single moment you decided right foot, left foot, spoon to my mouth, chew, swallow. That was you making a choice that said, let's keep going. Let's keep going. And that's why I say it's extraordinary to build yourself back from where you were. Oh my God. Huge.
Yeah.
Anybody who does something like that, it's amazing.
Well, and I'll tell you, it's not at least for me, it's not a journey that's over. Once we're done recording, the next thing on my calendar is I'm going for a run. My goal is to be able to run 1 mile. And this sounds ridiculous. I used to run 3 miles in the Texas Hill Country, in the Texas heat. My goal is to be able to run 1 mile nonstop on fairly flat land.
That's all.
And the thing that's hard for people to appreciate is if I don't control my mind, if I let, if I get anxious while I'm running, my oxygen consumption goes up, my respiration goes up. And it's not just that my respiration goes up, it's that I get to a point where I feel like I'm suffocating. And as soon as my mind crosses that threshold, it's really hard for me to keep running.
Mhm.
And so it's not a choice that, was made 3 years ago, or approaching 3 years ago as I was waking up from the coma. It's just an ongoing choice that, okay, today I'm going to take another step closer. I'm going to do something that's going to bring me a step closer to who I used to be.
Absolutely. One of the specialties that I help people with are their inner voices. And for me, I had a very, very difficult time with an inner critic. And when you said at the very beginning, everybody goes through something. And I could not agree more with you. I spent more than 2 decades battling an eating disorder and emotional eating and hiding it beautifully from every single person that knew me. And in that, I had become very, very, very well known with my inner critic. And I finally came to the point, and I shared this in my TEDx on how to stop the negative voices in your head. And that's literally what the TEDx is called. And I share with people this moment of when I was sitting in the dentist chair and I had refused the entire time that I was going through this to reach out to anybody for help. Adamantly refused, would have sooner taken it to the grave. And I was in the dentist chair getting another false tooth as a result of having an eating disorder. And I thought, heard a voice just like you. Maybe there's something you just don't know yet. I was working so hard to help myself through YouTube, books, self-help community, everything. And yet I still would take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. I could not break this cycle that I was in. And when I heard, maybe there's something you just don't know yet, I finally decided to reach out for help. And
Hmm.
in that, realizing that the negative voices are often messengers and they're wanting to share information with you. So, a variety of things that I teach my clients, I'm going to share two of them with you. Is one is they're both happen to be right on the hand. And to get in a mantra or to get in a rhythm of saying something, and the reason I have it on the hand is because for me, I usually have my hand with me. And it can be something as simple as I choose me now. I am safe here. And whatever forward phrase, and for the audience that's listening, as I'm connecting my thumb with my index finger, my thumb with my middle finger, my thumb with my ring finger, and then my thumb with my pinky finger. And each word, that's why it's a forward phrase, I, index finger, choose, middle finger, ring finger, me is the ring finger, now is my pinky finger. So whatever four-way for phrase you'd like to choose, you can create your own and allow it to be something that supports you in that moment. And the reason it's so important is because that negative voice just wants to let you know something. It's just wanting to share with you. And if you can either do another technique that I'm going to teach you, or you can just jump into a mantra, something to get you out of that state and into a new one. And remind yourself how far you've come. And the other one that I will actually share with you, and I'll have Craig put it here in the notes for the show notes. And this one is called the S.H.I.F.T Protocol. And this is, I actually just came back from a conference in Vegas teaching this, and it's called the S.H.I.F.T Protocol. So when it comes to your negative thoughts, again, 5, right, we're going to go with our fingers. So shift. You want to spot the negative thought, you want to hear it. Okay. So you have to have the awareness. Oh man, I can't do this. Okay, great. So you're going to spot it. That's on your thumb. You're going to hear it. Whose voice is it? Is it your voice? Somebody else's voice? Sometimes it can be an echo of somebody else telling you that you can't do this. And that's okay. So you're going to investigate it. Is this thought serving you? Is it helping you? That's I. Then F. We're going to frame it. We're going to look for something that says, is this always true? Probably not. It hasn't always been true. And then we're going to trade it in. We're going to trade it in for more supportive thought. I'm choosing to know that I can do this right now. I'm choosing to know that I can run this hill. I am choosing to take care of my body right now, whatever way you'd like to do it. But what you're doing in that moment is you're acknowledging the negative voice. You're acknowledging that inner critic, and you're acknowledging it in such a way that says, hey, I see you. It's okay. I see you. It's okay. You're going to shift it. You're going to spot it. So S is for spot. H is for hear. I is for investigate. Is it helping you? Is it not helping you? F is for framing it. You're going to choose a thought that says, hey, has this always been true? Probably not. And then T, trade it in for something else. When you hear those negative voices, allow yourself to have that conversation with it and says, no, not true. I hear you, but I can choose a different thought. And that is choosing your thoughts on command. And that gives you power, gives you control, gives you the choice that says, I can choose that one, or I could choose this one.
I love that. I love that. And I mean, that's so amazingly powerful. I really hope people listen to the end, because this is probably the biggest takeaway from the whole thing. And one of the things that's in that is, people talk about folks being fearless. And I would say if somebody's fearless, they're an idiot. There are things in life that should scare us. I'm more interested in people that are courageous,
Mhm.
because courage is taking action in the presence of reasonable fear. And when I hear that framework that you just laid out, you're saying, yeah, I see you. There is this voice. There is a real threat here. I acknowledge this threat, but I choose to adopt these thoughts.
I love that you pointed out about fearless, because I don't like that word either. I'm very what they would affectionately refer to as word sensitive. When we think fearless, and one of my teachers pointed this out so beautifully, fearless. I've never met a soldier that has gone running into war without fear, but I've met a whole lot of courageous ones. And that stands out that they had the courage. They had fear, they had the courage to pursue. You don't want to be fearless, you want to be courageous. Fear is a good thing. It helps you determine if there's a threat or not.
Keeps you
Courage
alive.
allows you, exactly. Courage allows you to acknowledge the threat and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, back to running. One of my fears, I measure my oxygen as soon as I stop running.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's in the 70s. And so fear of my O2 going too low and passing out on the street
Yeah.
is probably a good thing.
It's a good thing. You want to be aware of it. So notice what you put in place though. So now you carry that with you. You know your body, you know your strategies. That gives you the courage to go out and do it. And that's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, Nora, this has just been so incredibly powerful. What would be, so a couple things. One, I want to make sure people know how to reach you, but what would be a parting thought that you have for somebody who's either they feel stuck where they are or they have somebody they care about deeply that's stuck? What would be your parting thought and how can they reach you?
My parting thought for somebody who feels stuck and for somebody who feels that their loved one is stuck. My parting thought would be what's hilarious is that it's one of my passwords. It's keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep choosing more supportive thought. Keep choosing the supportive, encouraging voice in your head that says, it's okay. Keep going. Go with that one. Run with that one because that's going to support you in finding solutions, in finding ways to love people, and finding ways to support people, and finding ways to support yourself and to help yourself. The more you can help yourself, the more you can help others. And that's a beautiful thing.
Wow, that's great. And how can
Mhm.
people reach you?
The best way to reach me is at my website, and it's titled DTB Horizons. So D as in determined, T as in two, B as in B, horizons.com. Determined to be horizons.
Lenora, thank you for sharing this. I hate to see people stuck, and I feel like you gave people real powerful tools to break free. Thank you for
Okay.
sharing that on Leaders and Legacies.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg. Craig.